And we are now preparing to live stream.
Yes.
So at that point, you can close that down. I'm going to take over your screen for 1 second.
Okay.
So if you want to follow what I'm doing real quick, Michelle,
Okay.
we've been posting the public invite just to the YouTube comments
Oh, okay.
because a couple people have asked in the past for it.
All right.
So come down to here, copying
Okay.
that.
Uh-huh. I'm watching.
You got the City of Monroe logo up here. You know you're on your brand
Okay.
account. And you just,
Oh, and then you just put it into the public comment?
yep.
Okay.
That way they can see that. And then up here I put invite and comments.
Okay.
And then that's pretty much it. Then you just close down YouTube. You don't need it anymore.
Okay.
And
And
then
then
up
I
in-
can close out of YouTube?
Yep. And then up here now on your screen, Michelle,
Yes.
you have the YouTube controls. So just make sure you're always got the red blinking light for recording and the live on YouTube.
Got it.
You
Okay.
don't
And
need
then,
to suspend that when you're done with the meeting. You just end the meeting and it'll quit streaming.
okay, that's what I was going to ask you. So just end the meeting and it'll be done.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
if for whatever reason you needed to. You can hit this down arrow button and hit stop
Oh.
streaming if you ever
Okay.
needed to.
Okay.
All
right.
For those that are on that are just joining our last minute or so, we are live on YouTube. So for awareness, before we get started in the meeting in about 4 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake.
You are welcome. Don't forget that anybody who wants to share a screen, Michelle, is going to need to be made a co-host.
All right. And so far, my understanding, Vince, is that it's Mark, correct? That will be co-host that needs to share?
Yeah, if we put back on what we had last week, I think that would be the extent if we need to look at that again. Hopefully
Okay.
you have it handy dandy, Mark.
Okay, then I think we're set.
Alrighty, I'm going to be muting myself, but I'll be listening to the meeting if you need me.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake.
My pleasure.
Councilman Biden, hello, and just so you know, we are already on YouTube as we wait for the last 2 minutes here before we go live.
You guys want me to call Jeff Green to see if he needs help?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Sure.
That's fine. I'll take care of that.
I think Jeff's the only other, participant we were looking to set up, so. This is unlike when we're in the council meeting, everybody's scrambling the last 15 or 20 seconds to end their conversations to get to the dais before the meeting comes to order. It's not used to this silence.
You're calling the good old days, are you?
That's a lifetime ago, I keep saying.
Well, we do have 6 o'clock. I'll look at clerk treasurer
Yes.
first to make sure we're good to go, and then
We are.
we are. Okay, it is 6 o'clock, so at this time, we'll call the city council special meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore,
Here.
Felder, Whitman,
Here.
Nico Angeli,
Present.
Vining,
Here.
Germaine,
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Present.
And I just want to say to Councilperson Felder that I was barely able to hear you, so just might want to adjust your mic going forward. Okay, thank you, sir.
Sound okay on that? Clerk, next item, invocation and pledge, please.
The invocation. Guide our working together, give us wisdom to make the right decisions, your understanding to listen to each other, and your compassion to promote the peace and welfare of the residents of this community.
Thank you. If you join, please, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
For which it
which
stands,
one
one
nation, under God,
Indivisible.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before I get started, just kind of review, because I'm not sure that there will be or will not be participants here this evening, as we always do. And while we are in a virtual meeting, it's still the rules of the chamber. All virtual is still here. If there is comments at the close, mindful of the time of 3 minutes as it states, but also probably just prior to public comment there, speaking with Mr. Pastou, he'll make a brief comment about from the administration regarding some of the inquiries we've received regarding some of our resolutions and actions, particularly in relation to recreation and some of the inquiries that have come in, but we'll do that at the end. So the clerk, with that, next item, please.
The next item is council action. Item 2735, consideration to adopt COVID-19 resolution number 7.
Thank you. Mr. Pastou or Mr. Buds, I'm not sure we're going to kind of review where that's at as we go forward, and then the items of importance.
I'll take a shot at it to start with. There are 2 actions. Essentially, we're asking council to approve. Governor Whitmer extended the use of remote technology for council meetings, which would extend to our boards and commissions. And that executive order extended the use of remote technology through June 30th. That is one aspect that's contained in the resolution. And then the other one deals with what has been referred to stay home, stay safe, extending that through May 28th. And so contained in the resolution is, again, continuing that in compliance with the executive order. I did put in there that we would be looking to do some training the week of June 1st, and that hopefully be able to be open later that week. We do think it's important to have some training, safety training, get folks acclimated, catch up before we come back to full-scale operations. And so essentially, it does in this resolution say we're closed through June 3rd or June 7th, which is Sunday night, and then opening obviously on the 8th. But we may end up exercising it a little bit earlier in the week if we feel we're ready to do so. But this one's does state through June 7th, the closing of City Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Pastou. I'll see if there's any questions, but also as we did at the last meeting, we'll continue to try to get through the raised hands for the motions and the seconds. I'll try to keep up with everybody if you do that, but let's see if raised hands are there any questions. If not, we can move forward. Councilman Michelangeli.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion that we adopt COVID-19 resolution number 7.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Michelangelo, supported by Councilman Lamore on the item number 2735, which is the adopt the COVID-19 Resolution 7. Any final comments or questions from council?
No.
Seeing none. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Whitman,
Yes.
Michaelangeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Jermaine,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is under presentations, item 2736, former Lazy Boy site redevelopment.
Thank you. Mr. Pastu, and I think Mr. Cocker might have some as well, but first off, I want to appreciate some of the follow-up materials and information. Helpful to look at, kind of review back on some of that, but also for the conversation. And I believe Mr. Green may have things as well. Mr. Pastu.
Well, thank you, Your Honor. Part of, at our last meeting, Councilmember Michelangeli expressed some concern about us kind of departing somewhat from the spirit of the sub-area plan for the Lazy Boy site. We've had a couple of subsequent discussions via Zoom and a couple of exchanges of correspondence. And I think what I'm comfortable recommending tonight is, going forward, I think there was some concern with the proposed retail site plan, which is in concept. We haven't received anything formally, but view it in the context as you normally would for a site plan with the sidewalks, location of loading, unloading, parking. I think, on the preliminary one has quite a bit more parking maybe than necessary, inclusion of trees and lighting in the parking lot, and then also a sidewalk area. And then also with some of the infrastructure, looking at narrowing once you get past the retail building entrance from a 36-foot width near Telegraph. Past this point, it's referenced here to 26 feet, again, in the character of traffic calming, but also, I think, within the spirit of the sub-area plan that was presented by MKSK. And I think one of the things we talked about is also, and actually staff had actually kind of reached out to MKSK back in December to assist in developing with design standards for the entire development. And then it's listed all of the things that would go into consideration, which is typical for setting the development standards associated with a plan unit development. And then a couple other items, the conceptual layouts for the various phases would involve design with a landscape architect prior to being submittal for the infrastructure layout. And engineer plans certainly would have, I think, a review, and this would give us the comfort of staying within the spirit of the sub-area plan that was presented to us by MKSK, have them just review that before and suggest any recommendations. There was some question regarding, I think there's 4 buildings that were identified in the sub-area plan presented by MKSK to look at. One was, there's actually a couple of silos, a taller one and a much smaller one, kind of shorter, rounder, wider. But I think that going forward, we do see some merit to not demolishing the taller silo at this point. It's right on the edge of the green space open area that was identified in the sub-area plan. And then the boiler building, determine whether it's salvageable. One of the things that we talked about internally, and Mr. Green came up with the recommendation, is just to retain an architect that we had worked with in the past, just to assess its economic viability, that we're not, again, losing an opportunity for that feature. And then lastly is just a suggestion to form a design review subcommittee that would focus on the aspect of the site plan and or the development of the plan unit development. And it suggested, we suggest a couple of council members. So we think that that can put a process in place, I think, to address, some of the concerns that, council member Michelangeli mentioned at our meeting last week.
So thank you for the review. Let's see if there's any specific inquiries from council members. And if you, again, raise a hand, it'd be helpful because it keep track of everybody, the clerk and myself. Let's see if there's any. Councilman Michelangeli. You're muted, sir.
Thanks, Your Honor. I just wanted to thank the city manager and the administrative staff. We had a couple of lively conversations over the last few days. But I think all of us have a better understanding of what the scope of the project is. And I appreciate the work that the city manager put into creating this review and land use process, which I think is pretty comprehensive. So I think with what's in place or what's recommended by the manager, I think will live up to the intent of the sub-area plan.
Other inquiries from council members? I guess I'll make a comment, see if there's other hands that come up. For Mr. Pastu, I echo Councilman Michelangeli's thoughts with the staff administration. You know, there were some, as it says in the first one, about the various locations, the sidewalks. Rather than going through those, I think I have a couple that I think were mentioned before. I think we just sent them to you. And I think Councilman Michelangeli mentioned how that the deceleration really kind of cuts into the front and trying to make that space available for the people all the way across is going from wider distance to narrow. But I think the extent to which was discussed and as presented, I think it gets us in a position to be able to, as Councilman said. So I'll see if there's other questions or inquiries from council. Councilwoman Germaini.
Will we be informed of any decisions that may change as they go on?
Well, I think, oh, absolutely. If I may, Your Honor, in response, one of the things that we've, I've struggled with is this has been a phenomenally fast-moving process. And that's good because we have some interest in the site and its redevelopment. And so we've been a lot of focus on trying to meet all some real critical deadlines to keep it moving along. And then, I will tell you, we've kind of got sideways a little bit, certainly with this pandemic, but even preceding that a little bit. Historically, we've used our work sessions to keep council apprised as these developments. And again, I will tell you, it was pretty fast moving in a lot of these areas, but I think going forward, and certainly with the recommendation to have a couple council members on there that, we can, and I think we're all more comfortable now with, using this medium to hold our meetings. And so we can keep you updated as major developments take place.
Good, thank you.
Other questions from council members? Councilman Michelangeli.
Your Honor, should we, do we need to take any formal action relative to what Mr. Pastu has put together so we can kind of memorialize it in the minutes?
Look into Vince, but also the other staff and Mr. Budge if it's necessary. We'll see.
I'm looking to Mr. Buds if that's not going to, although I had this listed as a presentation, I'm not sure that we couldn't take action, but I'll leave it to Mr. Buds to.
Matt, if I might also, as you think that whether we kind of use this as a motion as a framework going forward, but when you get down to the 8th item there with the subcommittee and 2 council members, is that going to be something that needs to be also voted through here? We've gone through this before where council members are interested or could, or we don't know when it is, what time we meet, or is that something we give to the city manager to get back and do as well? Just trying to think how best to do that.
Your Honor, I will say from the perspective of taking action tonight, I would certainly take the opinion that the discussion of this site and how site planning and further discussion of the development is going to occur was certainly contemplated by the notice. So I don't think there's anything improper about taking action on that if council so desired. I would say if the decision is to call that essentially, I guess the way I would word it, and I would defer to the city manager to see if he agrees, an ad hoc committee and the creation of that, if that wants to be done by motion to enact the provisions that were discussed here this evening. I certainly have no problem with that being a motion and being in the minutes. And I think that would be within the scope of what was part of the discussion this evening as to whether council people want to, there's going to be a decision on who those are. If that's ready and people are willing to make that decision, that could certainly happen now. If that's to be deferred for later discussion, that's certainly acceptable as well.
Okay, before I see there's one hand before I go to the hand raised, I see that we might have lost Councilwoman Whitman. And I know Jake's probably working on that, and she's also working on getting back. Before we get into making motions, and then I obviously want to make sure we have all council members present, because maybe we can't have continued discussion and bring her up to speed. Councilwoman Moore, is that your note about the councilwoman?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Councilman Andrew, or Councilman Felder.
I'm sympathetic to many of the issues that Councilman Ike Angeli brings up. I think he makes a lot of good points in terms of making the site not only business friendly, but customer friendly as well, making it somewhere people actually want to go and making it a beautiful spot in the community. I think there's a lot of developments that occur that don't necessarily happen that way. I like that committee is being put together and the council is being included to have some say on how that's formed, not just the approval. But if there's particulars of the project that we're going to discuss later, I'd certainly be happy to do that. I think probably have a say. If that's better left to the committee, then that's fine as well.
And as we continue to wait for the reconnect for Councilwoman, but I think that there is with these meetings the opportunity to bring council back in together and review as the subcommittee moves forward. So I think it's a way to keep that inclusion, as the Councilwoman Germaini asked. Clerk Treasurer Lavoie, you had.
I just wanted to let you know this may take a minute or two. Jake is trying to get back in touch with her, so one moment.
I think I just start thinking some things out loud, I guess. I know that we have other projects that are coming up that potentially will involve, I think, maybe a similar type format of a subcommittee. And I think that they're in different precincts as well. And, we talk about the former Mako site and all that, and getting counsel from that, as well as others that haven't desire to participate. So I see a couple of hands. I'll go to Councilwoman Moore and then back to Councilwoman Germaini. Brian?
Yeah, Your Honor. I'm thinking that we could form a committee similar to the way we formed the committee for MCOP. That would seem to work out pretty well. We came to some pretty good decision making. That we made some pretty good decisions based on that committee, and we were able to bring it back and formulate a final decision amongst the council. So I think that's probably the best way of turning with this as well.
And before I go to the Councilwoman, I think, and oddly as it is with having virtual meetings, it might actually open for those that may not have had the opportunity for this time schedule to be able to participate in the past. We might be able to do that as well. Councilwoman Germaini, you got a hand up.
Your Honor, do we not still have a telegraph corridor committee? Or is that gone?
Good question, because I
We
know
still have
that's
it.
one of the
If I
other
may, Your
sides.
Honor?
Mr. Pastu?
Absolutely. We still have a Telegraph Road Corridor Improvement Authority. We held a couple of meetings, first two essentially to get the development plan and tax increment financing plan, to City Council for approval, and that's been approved by Council and forwarded to the state. So we haven't scheduled anything at this point in time with them, but again, the difficulty of some of these meetings, we got through the work that we needed to before, the state of emergency was declared.
So the telegraph corridor committee could help with this committee as well.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I don't want to make it too cumbersome, and I'm not trying to exclude them, but we've internally as a staff, we've had Mark, Mr. Green, Ed Sell, Matt Buds, Patrick Lewis have been the primary ones. And, we had broken this thing into essentially 5 different phases of the project and timed everything so we could try and get to a point where we could start the demolition when we were supposed to. And we achieved that, and then also wanted to have the infrastructure design in place and a brownfield development plan in place, and as well as some of the financing. And the one piece that we know we still have to work on is the land use aspect of it. And that's where this group would fall into place. The other four elements are pretty well, I think, resolved at this point in time. There may be a little tinkering here with, scope of project that may affect some of the financing, but not necessarily. But I would consider all that difficult to work through.
One more question while we're waiting for Paula. Did they start the demolition yet, or is that coming soon?
They're getting started. I know there's Congresswoman Whitmer. Mr. Lewis, I may ask him if he can pipe in. I know he's listening, if he's got an update, but they've been talking with the contractor, Homrich, regarding the start of the project. Is there a way that you could take?
Yep, Patrick's permitted to talk. He has to unmute his own microphone, though.
All right, I'm here.
Mr. Lewis.
Can you hear me? All right,
Yes.
Honorable Mayor and Council, Patrick Lewis, Director of Engineering and Public Services. They've started the asbestos abatement. They started over there on Thursday. They think it'll be at least 2 or 3 weeks before they would start anything that would be noticeable to the public as actual demolition. But they are over there working, and so everything's more or less on schedule, as much as it can be with the delays. But they're making pretty good progress so far.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman, Whitman, we see her back. It looks like you took a lunar trip at background, which is great. I'm glad you're back, and you're on mute. You're on mute. So we're just kind of reviewing some of the items that are in the presentation Mr. Pastu gave. No decisions, no actions yet, but we're was asked to looking to make a motion to make it. I just solidify it. So. I don't know if you had any other questions or thoughts, and if not, we'll probably.
No, I think I'm fine.
Okay, Councilman Michelangelo. Muted, sir. That's okay.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion that we accept and place on file the Lazy Boy site redevelopment land use process as prepared by the city manager.
Second.
There's a motion by Councilman Michelangelo, supported by Councilman Moore to on item 2736 to accept the correspondence and outline and place it on file as a recommendation to follow. Any other comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Can I just ask for clarification, sir?
Yes, please do.
Just one question for the minutes. Will then include the information that City Manager Pastu sent this afternoon at 3:56?
Yes, that is it. Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just wanted to clarify. All right. Councilperson Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Whitman,
Yes.
Michaelangeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Germaini,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. And clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 2737, discussion housing rental program.
Thank you. Mr. Pastu, please.
There's a couple items with related to this for discussion. We started some of this discussion last fall, and Mr. Green and I were kind of ramping up to give you a kind of a full-blown proposal to essentially enhance our housing rental program with additional inspections, putting together a budget related to the legal end of it, staffing, and we were going to bring that to council. And in fact, I think we had it tentatively scheduled for the meeting on March 16th, and then we kind of went into the state of emergency that we have. But there's that lying out there, and then there's also just from my end of it, I'll just recommend that we consider suspending some inspections. We're just not comfortable having our inspectors going into homes just yet. I think we're going to need a little more time to, from a safety and security standpoint, But I also don't want to end the conversation with just that alone. There's some things that we had also talked about looking at related to the solid waste collection and what have you. And so some things we can pursue outside of that, but I just don't think that we're ready yet to go, continue the inspections as we had in the past and as enhanced as we had discussed earlier.
I see, I think one, maybe two hands up. I'll go to Councilwoman Germaini first.
So, Your Honor, the question I have is the letters that were already sent out to landlords with bills, are those going to be extended? Do they have to pay the bill without the inspection? That's kind of confusing.
Well, to be honest with you, I think the registration is still necessary. The timeliness of the inspection, it may be delayed as well. So I wouldn't expect I think they should still be registered. And we can under, circumstances do, complaint related inspections. It's just that we're going to have to be a lot more careful if we receive a tenant complaint. But just the ongoing number of inspections is what, is some cause for concern.
So do landlords have to pay that, I think it's $110 or whatever?
It's $100, I believe. Yeah.
So they owe that bill, but no
Yep.
inspections at this time. Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Clear. Thank you.
Yeah. Councilman Michelangelo.
Question for the city manager. Vince, was the house that burnt down on Second and Harrison, was that owner or rental occupied?
Unregistered rental unit with no insurance.
And who was the, do we probably know who the property owner is? If it
We
was
do.
unregistered?
Mr. Buds and I talked about it late this afternoon, our approach to dealing with that situation.
We're going to file, you're thinking about filing any action against that person?
Well, I'm going to have a conversation with him tomorrow
Okay.
and see where it leads to from there. That was kind of where Mr. Buds and I concluded would be the best course of action to try and expedite, if you will, bringing that building down as soon as possible. But I will be reaching out to him tomorrow.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Pastou or staff on this topic on the rental housing rental program? So Vince, I guess to follow up to the councilman's comment, and it really ties to Councilman Michelangelo as well, as maintaining that, continuing to send those out, at least allows us to continue to have a record that we're working from, and that all of a sudden find out we have a larger number that aren't responded. I'm sure if we send the letters and about inspections being delayed, but still wanted to maintain the registry, I think is important. Otherwise, I think we could find ourselves even behind on that as well. And I think there's others that staff or others will learn that transitioning that may be vacant now. I've noticed some houses just more from a blight side that, while we're back on grass cutting and things, then you look close and you realize it's not occupied at all. And then, who's through GIS can determine, homestead or not, rental, or there's much we can learn if we continue to stay on it as opposed to trying to lift it all later. So, Councilman Michelangelo.
Thanks, Your Honor. Vince, relative to that house, and this is maybe a question for the city attorney. If that house was unregistered as a rental, was it also unregistered as a non-homestead property? Because if the person failed to declare it as non-homestead, then that property owner has been failing to pay the 18 mills to the school system for additional tax. And is that going to be subject to the State Department of Treasury to their penalties?
You might be looking toward Mr. Buds.
Your Honor, that would certainly be an issue that would be if someone was claiming homestead tax status on a property that's not their primary residence. That's certainly an issue, and I know Mr. Geitch in the assessor's office has dealt with that from time to time. I will certainly make effort to alert him and work with him on that. I believe, and I don't have full detail on this, that this may have even been a duplex. So I'm going to I never make assumptions, but my belief was that it was non-homestead, which we will confirm. And our primary efforts thus far have been looking at abating any hazard caused by the destruction of that property and the need for demolition. And certainly we'll include the councilman's concern and address that as we move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. You know, Councilman, I think you raised a good point as well as we start to continue with our move in technology and GIS and plotting. You know, just comparing those two between those that are homestead and those that maybe you know, known as rentals in way to track that. I'm sure the assessor already looks into that, but there's ways to be putting the data together, and it could be calls, responses, whether police, fire, building department, or whatever. So, Councilman Michelangelo.
Yeah, thanks, Your Honor. And just again on this house on 2nd Harrison, you know, this is the compounding problem. We have a property owner that didn't register it as rental, so he didn't go through the inspections. We do have people in town that have rental property that pay the fee and they get their inspections. But then when I read the fire report, they said that the fire department, public safety, had a hard time fighting the fire because the property owner was a hoarder. And if they would have been going through the rental inspection, we would have known that. So it also put the public safety personnel that were in the building in danger because of all the stuff that was in the building. So, you know, these issues have a compounding impact on what goes on in the community. So I hate to say this, but whoever owns that property, I hope we make an example of them to the rest of the community. So other people that have rental property that is not registered, step up and get it registered. Thanks, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilman. Other comments from council members? So, Mr. Pastu, I guess I'll go back to you, see if there's any final comments or follow-ups or things you may be looking for from council this evening. If not, we'll look forward to what you and Mr. Green put forward with us in the near future.
Well, I think, Your Honor, what I'd like to do is at least, you know, one of the first actions that were taken back in March, maybe the first COVID-19 resolution included, you know, suspending inspections with the rental program. So we may very well have another one at the next meeting just to, you know, incorporate that for a period of time. Probably a little latitude once, if we get to a point where administratively we're comfortable with it, then we can, you know, resume inspections if we get safety equipment that we deem necessary. So.
All right, Councilman Michelangelo, your hands up.
Yeah, thanks, Your Honor. One other question for the manager. You know, I kind of agree with you about suspending the inspections based on COVID-19, but what about creating, or what about an administrative policy relative to the waste management issue?
Well, that one, again, sorry, Your Honor, if I may, in response is, that's something we can work on in putting it together for council to take action again. We do have after Mr. Lewis and I worked on our refuse count last fall, I think we're comfortable. We've got a number of them that we can add to the, you know, that would be rentals that were not registered, but also we know that there's multiple units in some places that are paying for essentially single family residential collections. So I think it'd be far more equitable for them to pay the cost of that service.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll be getting more from you as we move forward. Is that correct, Mr. Pastu?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Any other final comments on this item? Okay, I know the next item was listed there was about adjournment. Before we do that, because at the start I wanted to at least give an opportunity, since I know council members, whether it be phone calls, emails, some of our actions and the importance of why we're doing what we do. And while we do communicate that, we've had work sessions and we've had actions, and as our communication directors puts information out. I had asked Mr. Pastu before we close to just kind of do kind of that review on some of the recreation items that have come in and the thought process that went through that. And Mr. Pastu, he, as we chatted earlier, just kind of give us, I guess, a foundation to that and go from there.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, we had received some calls, with the Recreation Department, a few emails mostly related to pickleball courts. But we had a work session with council talking about the cancellation of special events, park reservation, or summer concert series and recreation programs. But also part of that was included a memo from Parks and Rec Director Loretta Lapointe that included some other aspects of operations that we didn't take necessarily action on, but did discuss. And part of it was, one of the items was, taking down the tennis court nets, pickleball nets, and basketball nets at basketball courts, among a number of other operational changes that were made. And part of it is that, again, consistent with Center for Disease Control, maintaining social distancing, discouraging that, an assembly of people, certainly within that spirit, and certainly what we've been doing a lot for not just recreation, but any aspect that we can have some influence on is consistent with that. There's 4 pickleball courts over at Manor Park, and again, I can appreciate the desire to be out there, but again, consistent, we've discouraged, congregating of people consistent with the requirements, or shouldn't say requirements, but the recommendations of the CDC. And then if I may just add one other thing, among all the other things that we had talked about beginning in mid-April through till we finally had a chance to talk about some of our recreation programs, we held off on that, taking those nets down until we had a chance to have some dialogue with council. And part of it is even just talking with Loretta, it's like, okay, what does it matter right now? Who's going to go out and play? If you recall how cold it was in April, we had a couple nice days, but we also were getting snow in flurries in late April. And so I thought better of it. Let's just wait till we get a chance to chat with city council before, making that decision to take the nets down. So.
Thank you, Mr. Pastu. I just thought it was important to cover here in just as a review. I'm not sure that there have been inquiries here this evening or not, or maybe at our next meeting on our next regular meeting coming up next week. So I'll just, while it's not on council comments, is not on there, I just always give an opportunity if there's something that is pressing for a council member to share with Mr. Pastu or us, like Councilman Viney, and please unmute and your comment.
Thank you, Your Honor. Excuse me. Speaking of the parks and recs, is the Labor Park gonna start back up?
So I'll see either Mr. Pastu.
I'm going to let Mr. Lewis. We've had a discussion over, I don't know, somewhere in the last few days. Patrick, if you don't mind talking about the contractor's plans for coming to get the project restarted.
Certainly. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Again, Honorable Mayor and Council, Patrick Lewis, Director of Engineering and Public Services. We did speak to the contractor. Fortunately or unfortunately, I guess it'd be fortunately for them, they were not shut down on a couple of projects they had going on in Ohio. So they did shift gears when they were shut down on ours. They had actually started for a couple of days here, the middle of March, but they bounced back to Ohio and are finishing up a street project. So they're probably going to be, could even be the first week of June, but definitely after Memorial Day till they'll be able to free up and come back up here and start on Labor Park. We also are going to be, for your approval at next Monday's meeting, issuing them a small water main project on Lorraine Street too, to stay ahead of the concrete paving. But they have committed that they would not only are they going to try to stay on schedule at Labor Park once they come back, but they want to kind of park a crew up here for the rest of the summer. They definitely want to work on our project. So they're going to bid our remaining projects pretty hard as well. So I would say probably 3 weeks out from them starting at Labor Park, but that's our most recent update.
Thank you, Patrick. Any final comments from council or inquiry for administration while we're here? Councilman Michelangelo.
Your Honor, this is for Patrick. Do they anticipate on Labor Park completing it by the end of the construction season?
Yes, that would be the completion date that we had bid in there was October 2nd or 3rd, whatever that Friday was. By rights, we would probably need to extend that for the duration of the shutdown, but the project's not such that they would need, I don't think they're going to need all that time there. They were very optimistic that barring some other catastrophic shutdown of a couple of months, that they shouldn't have any problem getting that done.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Moore.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple of questions regarding the Lazy Boy site. Are we thinking about, and I guess this is out to the rest of the council, are we thinking about forming a Lazy Boy site committee? If we are, it's something we want to probably put on the agenda for next time or vote on it tonight. We've got time to do it now. No better time than the present. Or do you want to think on it? That's one question I'm posing. The other question was regarding the refuse collection, and if we're going to assume that we're going to get any kind of a reduced price on the refuse due to the fact that they reduced the amount of refuse they're taking, recyclables, etc. We've asked that a couple of times, just wondering if we have any resolution on that yet. That's pretty much it.
I can answer the one with the waste management. We haven't went and try and settle up with them now. So we know they're back to doing bulk pickup things starting today. There's a issue related with that, and then some of the recycling costs associated taking with the material to the landfill should bring a reduced cost. So those would be the three items that we'll talk with them further.
Thank you.
So I realize we're in a special meeting, and I wanted to, I'm looking at Mr. Buzz and our clerk treasurer, but the business is transaction regarding to the items that are posted, but just so we don't take other thoughts outside of that here this evening. Mr. Pastu, are you looking for council members' interest at this point and then kind of figuring that out with conversations? Because we don't know when we're going to be trying to hold these meetings, what it would be. It'll probably come down to everybody's schedule, but is it something you want to do outreach on, or is it something you're looking forward to this evening, or can it be?
Well, if you could give me some direction, I'll put something together for Monday night.
Okay. So I'll just, if there's council members that are interested, please, I see Councilman Michelangelo is. I know it's Councilman Germaini and Lamore. I'd be interested, but at the same time, I think it's getting people, council members involved in projects that they might be. So we'll start there, Mr. Pastu.
Okay.
And then you can kind of work through that and maybe some follow contacts with those council members.
Very good.
I think we'll move forward on the agenda, and while it's not posted on there, we have meetings and we do take public comments. I'm looking at the participants that are on the number. There might be a couple members or community members that are participants that may wish to make a comment. Clerk Treasurer Lavoie, I know you're managing the meeting, so I'm just going to state that we'll take an opportunity here and see if anybody is raising hand or contact that you can see they'd like to make public comment at this time.
I don't see any members of the public. The only other people I see on it are other staff members, but I may not be able to see everything either. I don't know.
I don't see as well, so I'm just check and see. Last opportunity for any public comment that may be there that we do not see, but we should. I see none. So, Mr. Pastu, if you're set, I think.
If I could just add one more item before we adjourn.
Yes.
Just to give you a heads up on the next meeting, we are going to go back to our regular work session schedule. And having said that, I basically I'm going to ask that we go into closed session. We have 6 collective bargaining agreements that are all due here at the end of June 30th. There's been some negotiations taking place, so I need to get you up to date where some of those are at. And then also I've got an item that's going to involve attorney-client privilege correspondence that we would do that. And that probably will be there'll be enough time, those items to probably get us to our regular meeting at 7:30.
Clerk Treasurer.
Well, if we're gonna go into closed session, we'll have to call a special meeting to go into closed session.
That's
So
right.
will we still need a work session too, or just? And we can discuss that later. I just want to make sure,
Good point.
just find out if I'm doing 3 meetings next Monday or that's okay. I'll do 4 or 5. I don't care, but just clear it up for me later. Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was kind of the same thing with structurally there, how we get, make sure we get those posted. And I know it's helpful to council as well as we work that through, not just so we're having these meetings, but that working through the Zoom process here, that knowing when we're going in which one and which one out and then back in. I think it did work out well last time, and I think we can manage it again, but just keep that on track. I see Councilman Michelangelo, your hands up, please.
Your Honor, regarding a special meeting, should we make a motion to have a special meeting next Monday for the purposes of labor negotiations and attorney-client privilege, so we get that out of the way?
I'm looking at Mr. Buds because I know that's, can we make those type of actions on a special meeting? I'm just looking to him.
Your Honor, I would suggest at this point, that's probably conducting business beyond the purposes that we said in the notice for this special meeting. Though, of course, we can circulate according to our normal practice, a request from one council person and the mayor to the city manager and the clerk treasurer to do that. And I just suggest we do it that way at this point in time.
Okay.
Okay, council can expect a short notice as we move forward, and just please respond as you have in the past. I much appreciate it. Seeing Ms. Presto is set, so nothing further. I need a motion to adjourn. Councilor Langley, your hand is up.
I'll defer.
Okay, who said that?
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Germaini. To adjourn, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Whitman,
You're on mute.
I was trying to get it off. Yes.
Iko Angeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Germaini,
yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Thank you all again, and we'll be meeting back up for sure on Monday, and we're adjourned. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Night.
Thank you. I'm going to get rid of this background.
Oh, I love it.